Welcome to the Provider's Report, where we delve into the world of value-based healthcare. Our mission is to empower healthcare providers with the knowledge and tools they need to deliver exceptional patient care. Each episode, we explore best practices, innovative strategies, and real-world examples of how to achieve the highest standards in patient communication and outcomes. Join us as we transform the future of healthcare, one conversation at a time.
Hello and welcome to today's episode. We're going to be talking about this little mini experiment that we did with Spine Care Partners. We pretty much looked at our group, the board, everybody involved, and we asked a very simple question. What do you wish you had known 5 years ago in clinical practice? Probably not shocking, but there was a decent amount of overlap, and we dove into some pretty good topics, and we want to share that with you guys. And I'm hoping this will inspire you and kind of get you revved up for what's to come in the next few years for you. So to start, I want you to think back to your first year in practice, or if you're a student, maybe think back to perhaps your first day in student clinic, something like that. I remember mine like it was yesterday. I was a brand new fresh grad out of Palmer. I had gotten a job at a place that was honestly a very busy office. And literally just a few weeks into that job, literally in the blink of an eye, the unexpected happened. And my amazing boss at the time literally had an almost fatal heart attack. He was working hard one day, and on the way home, he just didn't really feel right. And he had kind of been fighting it throughout the day. And then he realized on his way home he had two choices. He could choose to turn one direction and go to the hospital, or he could choose to take the turn the other direction and go home. And thank God, I remember him telling me that, someone in his family had had a similar experience and they chose to go to the hospital and it saved their life. So in that moment, he decided, you know what, let's just make sure everything's okay. He took that left-hand turn or whatever it was, and he literally collapsed in the hospital. Immediately started pointing to his chest, collapsed. Everybody knew what was going on. They literally found a 99% blockage in this poor man's heart. And he was able to get amazing medical attention and survived this wild incident. But what did that mean for me, the brand new grad? I literally took over a clinic overnight. I did not have the skills necessary. Thank God we had a wonderful support team who was able to work with me and help me at the time. And looking back, it was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. Looking back, I know that it is a huge part of what made me the provider that I am today. However, in the moment, I can assure you, it was not sunshine and rainbows. I was immediately put under a lot of pressure. I think I remember feeling pretty grateful that they felt confident in my ability, but I'm literally talking about weeks post-graduation. What are some of the things that I wish I had known? A lot. So I pray that none of you are in a situation like that, but it is good to hear about these kinds of things and get exposure so that in the moment when fluke things happen like that, you are prepared and you're able to bounce back. Short story short, everything ended up working out really, really well. My boss, again, survived and came back eventually, and we were able to work together for a good period of time. And I think it kind of transformed our professional relationship as well, and we were able to learn and grow from each other. And it was a very humbling experience, honestly. So what we're going to do next is dive in to what some of the answers were when we approached the Spine Care Partners team and asked that simple question, what do you wish you had known 5 years ago in practice? So we're going to start with John Ventura, who is someone I look up to highly, just an absolute wealth of knowledge. And he stressed two main things. The first being about marketing and persistence. He reminded us that sometimes it takes at least 7 touches to make a difference, to get someone to remember you, to take a lead and make it, turn it into a new patient visit, or take that networking approach and actually have it make a difference. 7 touches. So if you are doing something in the world of marketing and you feel like it's just a waste of time, you truly have no idea what seed you are planting. For example, just a few weeks ago, I literally had a new patient come in, and we typically always ask everyone how they heard about us. And I had asked, and he said that 7 years ago, I treated one of his friends. And so when he came down with this low back case, literally 7 years later, and he had mentioned it to a friend, that person who had seen me years prior said, absolutely, Rebecca is the person you need to see for this. So in the moment, 7 years ago, I was still very fresh into practice. You really have no idea the impact you were making. That gave me another new patient literally 7 years down the road. So just a wonderful, wonderful example about how everything you're doing to promote yourself and your practice really is worth it at the end of the day. My other favorite thing he mentioned about marketing is market with a purpose. When you are approaching medical offices, hospitals, or even commercial businesses or trying to market on social media, make sure you have a purpose. Do some market research, look around your area, try to find a problem and find a solution for that problem. That is how you should base your marketing strategy. It shouldn't just be willy-nilly or random or, hey, look how great I am. Look how great chiropractic is. We know how great chiropractic is, but a lot of these people don't. We have to specifically identify a problem that they're struggling with. And if we can solve that, you will have a successful business. So I thought that reminder from Dr. Ventura was just incredible. The second big thing he mentioned was choosing where to practice is another really important thing. So if you're listening to this and you're a student, definitely listen up right now. There are so many variables that play a role, and I feel like when we are a student, we're still rather young. We're in our mid to late 20s most of the time, maybe early 30s. And a lot of us don't have families when we start chiropractic school. So it can be really easy to either go back to your hometown or, go to a location that all your friends live in perhaps, or maybe you pick a location specifically because of the weather. Obviously use things like that to make your decision, but what we really want to do is be strategic. What are some of the best states to practice in? What states have the best reimbursement? What states have my style of chiropractic, if you will? If you're not a chiropractor and you're listening to this, the same thing goes for you. Nursing, for example, has a huge scope of practice issue in this country. Someone practicing in South Carolina could have a job setup that looks very different from someone practicing in California, for example. So make sure you are looking at all of the variables, but also think outside of the box. Think about where you want to be in 5 years when you are deciding where to practice. I'm currently in West Michigan, and if you would have told me 7 years ago I would still be here today, I would have laughed. I'm grateful to be here, but again, I wish that I had done more market research as well, and some of us can choose where we go and some of us can't, and we just have to make the best of that situation. So next up, I want to go ahead and talk about Brian Justice and what he said. He had mentioned the importance of a multidisciplinary practice, and there's a lot of great reasons for this. It's not in any business structure, really, it's not ideal to have one form of income or one service that you can provide. You actually want to diversify your approach. And a great way to do this is to provide a multidisciplinary practice of practitioners with different strengths and weaknesses, different skill sets, or possibly completely different disciplines altogether. And so when you're doing this, you have to market, you have to collaborate. So I wanted to touch on some really easy ways to do this. In our practice, we send out a literal, tangible thank you card to every single medical referral that we get. And believe it or not, that's something that not everyone does. But if a PCP or a physical therapist or an ortho are sending me a patient, I'm going to send them a thank you card, and an email is just not enough. So obviously when they start sending a lot, we're not sending a thank you card every time. But if it's every so often, or definitely their first few patients that they're referring to me, that thank you card is essential. We also do email check-ins with providers. I have about 3 or 4 PCPs that I'm currently forming relationships, and once every 6 months, I just kind of check in, especially if they're a relatively new practice or if I know that they're going through something. I'll go ahead and send an email and just say, hey, Dr. Michelle, just wanted to check in and see how your practice is going, give them a little update onto mine, and kind of go from there. And what that does is it reminds us of those 7 checkpoints, right? It reminds them that you exist, because in our day-to-day with patients, it's really easy to forget things. So it's that constant reminder, and you just never know what that next check-in will bring you. Coffee dates and business meetings are also really, really good ideas. I try to do these with certain companies about once a year, nothing crazy. You definitely don't want it to take up too much of your time, but I think it is important, again, for that touch point. Another great option is to create some tangible marketing cards that are basically an infographic. So I think a lot of people in my field anyways, we can create more overwhelming marketing tools. I think it has to be really simple, just a really small, maybe like 4x6 or 5x7, thicker carded paper that basically spells out what problems your practice can solve for people. You know, what are the most common patient demographics that you treat? What are the most common conditions that you work with? Something like that. So I definitely think that that is a great way to kind of get your name out there. You can send that out to businesses. Your patients can take them at the front desk and hand them out to people. It's just an easy way, and honestly a very affordable way to get that form of marketing done. I don't think you have to send it in the mail like people used to back in the day. I think just having them exist in a digital format and a tangible format can really go a long way. I personally recommend creating them on Canva, and I just do direct print through them. It's honestly very, very affordable. Next up, he mentioned community engagement. So this is obviously really important, but I feel like it can get misconstrued. Community engagement, you need to pick things to be a part of that make sense. So this kind of trickles back to basically having a purpose for everything that your business does. I know a lot of colleagues that are struggling in the marketing department or struggling in the new patient realm, but they're choosing community activities that they're not passionate about. You know, if you're not passionate about politics, don't do something at a political event, which, believe it or not, happens. If you are not really into sports chiropractic, don't set up a marketing event at a sporting event. It just doesn't track. And the people that you're going to be attracting with this marketing are going to see that. So try to pick things that make sense to you. For example, my practice, the pretty much only marketing we do involve getting internal referrals and medical referrals. Those are the things that matter to us, and that's just how we chose to basically start our business. So the marketing events that matter to me mostly trickle down to healthcare events or the general community events, like thrown on by the city directly. Those are really, really great because it shows our involvement with the community, and it's a very generic, and most other healthcare providers are also attending these events. These events are usually sponsored by the hospital in the area or, you know, smaller clinics throughout the area. So it's a great thing for me to be involved knowing that other healthcare practitioners are going to be there. So it just kind of makes sense. And then on top of that, we go to events that are specifically put on by other healthcare practices. For example, this week, we just got invited to the 30th anniversary of a really big physical therapy practice in Grand Rapids, which is where I'm based in. And again, it's going to be a lot of fun. It is a happy hour type of setup with drinks and hors d'oeuvres, but it's still a marketing event. It's still fostering that relationship that we now have with this company that has grown over time. I've probably been in communication with this company for about 4 or 5 years now, even before I opened up my own practice. And it's flourished into a really good professional and friendly relationship. So just a reminder, make sure you're picking things because they make sense. Don't just pick to go to a home and garden show that has nothing to do with chiropractic, thinking it's going to give you the most incredible patients in the world. It just doesn't track. So think back to your business plan, think back to what your practice stands for, the kinds of patients that you see, and honestly, as an owner, what you're passionate about, because that really, really matters. So what I recommend as well for networking and marketing in general, like we've discussed so far, we personally have a database that we've created and it tracks all of these locations and providers. So I personally use Monday.com for pretty much all of my database tracking, and I'm happy to share that with anyone who's interested. You're welcome to contact me. But you can use Asana, you can use Monday, you can use Airtable. It really doesn't matter. But here are some things that are worth tracking. Practice name, location, contact information, specific provider names, their specialties, how you can help them. Maybe putting a little note in there or categorizing these providers based on what they see a lot of. If this PCP sees a lot of cervical radiculopathy and you are very good at treating cervical radiculopathy, make a note of that. I think it's really important to do this because in the moment when you have someone approach you like a patient who is asking you, hey, what PT should I go to? What PCP should I go to? What specialty should I go to? You not only have a database of the people you already work with in the community, but you have cheat sheet. It's literally just a cheat sheet with tons of information where you can make really good clinical and business decisions accordingly. For example, when I was at Palmer, I actually did like a mini externship, if you will, where I worked at a community outreach clinic downtown. And this was a really unique setup because it was mostly Medicaid patients or those without insurance. And I will never forget being a student. And one of the nurses pulled me aside and said, "Thank God you're here because we hate upper extremity paresthesia." They said, "We hate cervical radiculopathy, we hate elbow pain, we hate wrist pain, we hate numbness and tingling." It was their least favorite thing to treat. And they were only telling me this because they had just found out that we had successfully treated a patient with this a couple days prior. And that little interaction basically spearheaded the way for them to send us pretty much every single upper extremity paresthesia case that they ever got. And that little bit really went a long way as far as that referral pattern. So at the end of the day, it's a great thing to track. Make sure you know where people are going and kind of what relationship status you have with all of these providers and all of these practices. Next up is Tom Nooner, and he had some really good insights about practice dynamics. And I really want to hone in on this because I feel like a lot of the people listening are in the early stages of their career at times, and it's a really good thing to consider. Having an exit strategy, understanding your practice dynamics. You don't have to wait until you're 45, 55, 65 to start thinking about what the end of your career looks like. You can literally start as a student. You can start as a fresh grad. You can start as an early business owner. Start to kind of sit back and think about what you want your life to look like 5 years from now, 10, 20, 30, and that will help better set you up for success. For example, I'm relatively young. I'm in my early 30s. I now own my practice, but I worked for others for almost 6 years. And I've now been a business owner for less than 2 years. And I think what really was helpful for me is understanding my short-term goals and my long-term goals. There's a lot of ways to spin this. For some of us, we really care about work-life balance. Maybe you're currently working 40 hours a week, 5 days a week, maybe 6. But your dream is to cut that down so you can spend more time with your family. Or maybe you have a wild hobby or you love traveling and it just really matters to you to have a 3-day weekend every single week. Maybe in the moment you're unable to do that for financial reasons or, just the marketing and building of a practice, or maybe you're under employment by someone else and you just don't have that kind of flexibility. But you can set that as a goal right now. It truly doesn't matter what stage of practice you're in. So keep that in the back of your mind. Other things to focus on, especially if you're a practice owner of any kind, any specialty, first off, and probably the most important for me, was the ability to delegate tasks. There are so many responsibilities and tasks on a regular basis that we're dealing with, and you don't have to do it all. I'm going to say that again. You do not have to do every single task and have every single responsibility in the practice that you own. So right now, even if you're a team of 1 or a team of 2, start thinking as if you have a team of 5. Start thinking about some of the things that are going to be the next on your list to delegate off. This could mean hiring an employee. It could mean using third-party systems. It could mean systematizing your practice. It could even mean purchasing some kind of software or automation/CRM to do some of these things for you and setting them as a goal if it's unattainable right now. For me, this was the biggest thing. I personally love work. I would choose it over most things. I would do it 12 hours a day. That's just my personal life. However, it was really important to me to figure out, okay, what are some of the work tasks that I enjoy doing versus the ones that I hate doing? And making sure that I set up my business to run accordingly with that. And then lastly, I want to talk about retirement and selling the practice, which are pretty hot topics. And I feel like now more than ever, I'm seeing healthcare providers who are not just doing this in their 60s. Sometimes they're doing it in their 40s. Some of them are switching careers. Some of them are selling practices and moving to different states. And then they become a W-2 employee instead of a previous business owner. So it doesn't have to, again, be something that you don't need to worry about until you're 65. We should all kind of know some of these basically know some of these issues and solutions from the get-go. So for example, retirement maybe could look in your 40s and 50s like switching from clinical practice to non-clinical practice, or maybe doing a half and half kind of split. That's personally my goal. I love taking care of patients. I love what I do, but the non-clinical work really, really intrigues me. So long-term, doing something like a 40-60 or 50-50 split Just makes sense. And some people want to retire altogether and they want to keep their practice. It could be a med spa, it could be a chiropractic office, it could be a PT clinic. You could even be in a hospital structure and switch to an admin role and kind of delve into that management lifestyle. That's technically retiring from clinical practice as well. Finally, another option is selling the practice for profit. Do not, and I emphasize this like crazy, do not wait until you're 60-something to learn about selling your practice and all of the things it entails and how you can appraise your practice. Know your numbers. I have seen so many colleagues try to sell their practice and they have no numbers to show potential buyers. So all of these potential buyers fall through the cracks because you can't show them your profit and loss statements. You can't show them your annual statistics. Start implementing these things now because you never know what might happen. I'm in my early 30s right now. What happens if someone approaches me in 10 years and says, hey, I want to buy your practice for $10 million, hypothetically? If someone said something like that and they were ready to purchase in that moment and I had nothing prepared for them, imagine. Right now, it is not even on my radar to ever sell my practice. But if I'm not preparing for the unknown now, I could miss out on some pretty big opportunities. So I thought it was really, really great for Tom to remind us that we always need to be thinking outside the box. It's great to love your job. It's great to love working with your body, your hands as a healthcare provider, and your minds, but we might not always have that. So we have to be prepared. We really, really do. Next up is Marcia Spoto, and she's a DCPT with just a wealth of knowledge, and she can look at everything from outside the box and provide some really great insight. And I love what she reminded us. When we asked her what she wished she had known 5 years ago in practice, she really focused on the power of language. And I don't think this gets stressed enough, but things like motivational interviewing and understanding the basics of social psychology and patient communication, different language strategies, it's really informative on how we can approach patient education and reassure patients about their health conditions and also encourage them to make changes to their lives. This ultimately improves patient outcomes, and as many of you know, that will forever be the ongoing theme of this podcast. It's so, so important that we are understanding the human sitting in front of us in a clinical session. So I kind of took a nosedive based on her reminding me of how important this really, really is, and I wanted to throw a few book recommendations at our listeners. So the 3 following books, some are very, very popular, so you may have heard of them, but if you haven't read these, I just really recommend that you do. So the very first one is called When Empathy is Not Enough, and this is written by Dr. Josh Satterley, who's actually the owner of a healthcare CRM company called Trust Driven Care. It's a relatively brand new book, and it really dives into the research behind patient communication, social psychology. I really think every single provider should be reading this book. It really focuses on MDs, DCs, PTs, and OTs, but honestly, every healthcare provider across the board could really benefit from that book. The next one it's a common favorite. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People, and it's written by Dale Carnegie, and this is just one of those books that literally every human being in the world should read. So if you haven't yet, definitely find it. We'll make sure to always, of course, put these links in our show notes as well so you can dive in. And the last one I wanted to mention is called How to Talk to Anyone. And this book is a little bit, I'd say, less in the healthcare world and a little bit more of a captivating book. It's really important. And the author, by the way, is Patrick King. It's just a super, super good book about basically how to be more charismatic in the way that you talk, how to approach delicate topics in a better way. And it provides really good action steps on how to do that, how to make conversations more enjoyable instead of more awkward. And I think in healthcare, that's really important for us because unfortunately, we do have to go through some pretty uncomfortable conversations. So I definitely recommend reading those books. Check them out. Let me know what you think. Next up on our list is Matthew Proctor, and he really stressed communication, but also in an interdisciplinary way. So he wishes that he had the confidence as an early graduate or an early practitioner when communicating with other specialists and knowing how to integrate better from a communication standpoint. And this immediately made me think of Jeff Langmaid's podcast. It's called The Evidence-Based Chiropractor, and it is incredible. It really does a good job of showing you the evidence, but also basically letting you know in lay terms how to relay that research to basically to your patients, which is amazing. And then lastly, to close, I have a few little tidbits of insight as well, and Kendall Payne actually chimed in with very, very similar tidbits of recommendations and advice. So I wanted to really stress the importance of basically mentorship and associateships, making sure that you're taking the time as a student, but also a young provider, a young physician, and making sure that you're really capitalizing on some of the relationships that you have built or some of the relationships that you could build. I tell every single student that I meet with, if you are going into some form of healthcare where you can work in private practice, instead of starting your own, I really recommend working underneath someone else first. There is just invaluable amounts of knowledge that you'll be able to attain in that kind of position. And even if you are dead set on owning your own business, I think it's really important to just work under someone for 6 months. If you don't even want to do that, maybe do a locum tenens job. Working in a practice that has other providers, admin, all of these other things so that you can learn. I think it's just really important to make sure that you can kind of go through what Kendall Payne mentions here as the trial and error period of business ownership. That's what he really stresses, because what better way to learn from mistakes than watching someone else go through them and getting to learn basically like a fly on the wall. I worked for 2 providers before I opened up my own practice, and let me tell you, I learned incredible amounts of skills and knowledge from them. I was also able to witness some of the behind the scenes action as a business owner. I was able to see what office managers are like and how to manage employees, front desk staff, billing specialists, other providers, how to do things like marketing, how to use systems and techniques with technology. I was able to kind of play around with all of that before I opened my own practice. And I think that's why when I sat down to write my initial business plan and develop my business, I already kind of had an idea of what I wanted. Where if you start off right away, you truly just have no idea. So Kendall Payne really stressed the same exact thing. And he also mentioned that he wishes 5 years ago he would have known the impact of forming really long-lasting relationships with local providers, especially medical doctors, if you are operating under a private practice setup. Not only does that help with networking, but also getting a referral source, but he found that it was really, really important to kind of meet them where they're at. For example, if you find a provider in your neighborhood or community that's looking specifically for a type of referral structure, there's no need to beg them to do more. If they are just looking to you to send you low back patients, that's great. There's no need to push things. Focus on what they specifically are needing and focus on, again, how you can provide that solution. So I know this was a ton of information. We really talked about a lot of different perspectives, and we pulled out really great information from multiple people on the Spine Care Partners team. And I really hope that what we're recommending resonates with you guys. So to summarize it all, it can really be boiled down into 4 main tips. Number 1, make sure you're investing in some kind of strategic networking and marketing system. I really encourage you all to invest in some kind of database tracker like Monday.com, Asana, or Airtable, where you store this data. There is no need in 2024 to be saving this information in our brains. Let's get it on some kind of database. That way it's always available for you and your team when you need it. Number 2, carefully choose your practice location and your career path. Make sure that you're focusing on multiple variables. Don't just pick the place for one specific reason. Don't just go to your hometown because you feel like it's what you have to do. Truly make this decision based on what your goals are career-wise, and do market research. Pick a location that is going to serve you and guarantee you better success. Number 3, prioritize effective communication with patients and other professionals. Not only will this basically give you so many dividends in return, but it creates amazing relationships with these patients and other professionals directly. This alone is what has grown my business to where it is in just under 2 years. And lastly, number 4, seek mentorship and consider associateships before going out on your own if private practice is what your end goal is. I cannot stress this enough. I think mentorship is one of the most important things out there. Make sure that you are never the smartest person in the room. Surround yourself with other people who are going to make you better, and surround yourself with people you can learn from. So again, I hope this was inspiring. I hope you took something away that you can implement and practice immediately. And now I want to kind of turn it on you guys. To anyone listening to this, if you have had your own experience, maybe you've been in practice 10 plus years as well, if you have anything that you wish that everyone new to practice knew about, something that you wished you would have known 5 years ago, let us know. Do you have anything you want to add to our amazing list? We would love to share your advice on our social media pages. So send your thoughts and send us a DM on Instagram at The Providers Report. We look forward to hearing from you. See you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to The Providers Report. We hope you found today's episode valuable and inspiring. To stay updated with our latest episodes, subscribe to our podcast wherever you like to listen. For more resources and continuing education opportunities, visit our website. Together, we can make a difference in the lives of our patients and truly set a standard for value-based healthcare.